We are here with Mr. Dave Johnson, who is a journalist for HowToGeek.com. It's an online technology magazine and one of the top 500 websites in the U.S. How to Geek describes itself as the magazine you turn to when you want someone to explain technology, whether that means detailed troubleshooting guides or in-depth explainers on the latest tech. Mr. Johnson has worked as a tech journalist since the days of the Palm Pilot and Windows 95. He's the author of almost 36 books about tech, digital photography, small business, and robots, and he authored a children's book that was later adapted into an interactive storybook. In addition to How to Geek, you can find him around the web on sites like Business Insider and IGN. He also is a podcaster and is the co-host of Battlestar Recaptica and Protocol 1, a traveler's podcast. So thank you for being with us.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me here tonight.
Is there anything you want to add about yourself that we might have missed?
I don't know. Isn't that enough? I could throw in, trying to show that I'm not just a geek. That I play drums and I'm a scuba diver and stuff, but that's just pandering. I'll own it. I'm a geek.
And see, that's my next question. Exactly, how are you? So, do you describe yourself as just a tech geek, or can you also play Dungeons and Dragons while discussing the fallacies of warp drive technology on Star Trek?
That's an interesting question. I have to say, I was never really attracted to D&D. But just to establish my geek cred, well, you already mentioned it. I've done a couple of podcasts. I did Battlestar Recaptica, which is a very clever name for a podcast that was about the TV show Battlestar Galactica, and also another podcast about the TV show Travelers called Protocol 1. Basically, I just simmer like all the time.
I totally love Travelers.
And actually, we were lucky enough to get to talk to Eric McCormack a couple of times on the podcast, and that was awesome. But basically, I'm into anything that's time travel-y or space travel-y, or dinosaurs with weapons mounted on their harnesses. Because I'm assuming you're riding the dinosaur in this scenario.
Okay.
Now, Battlestar Recaptica, did you just do the new series or did you do old?
That's right. Yeah, we did an episode by episode recap of the entire 5-season run of the 2004 to 2008 Battlestar Galactica, which is probably the best or the second best science fiction ever to be on television.
Really? Now, I'll tell you what I think my first is. I honestly absolutely adore Firefly.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's why I said first or second, because Firefly and Battlestar Galactica are neck and neck.
See, I'm over here. I'm a Red Dwarf girl. I mean, I love Red Dwarf. Yesterday, I was talking to my father, and we were remarking, we were having this deep conversation about the genius of Brent Spiner, how he goes from Bob Wheeler on Night Court to Data. And do y'all remember Bob and June Wheeler from Night Court? Do you remember this? Oh my gosh. They were only on a couple of episodes.
Hold on, I'm Googling.
And there were these hillbilly people that ended up coming before the judge, and like at one point they had a worm farm, and so Brent Spiner is playing this just hillbilly holding this coffee can full of worms because it was the last thing he could salvage from the stampede, and and like I'd always known him as Bob Wheeler from Night Court, and then when I started watching Next Generation, I was somewhat impressed.
But that is a deep pull. Does Brent Spiner even remember he was on Night Court?
In my opinion, it was his best work.
Evidently he does, because he evidently did a video. There's a video of him on YouTube where he suddenly becomes Bob Wheeler on Night Court yeah, it's just called, it's on YouTube. How Brent
You have some
Spiner
watching to do.
became Bob Wheeler on Night Court.
That's the best. Like, I swear, if I ever get down, which is not often, I pull up those couple of episodes and I'm fine. They're so funny. Okay. All right. I still want to know about 5G and why it will not kill us. The world needs to know.
All right. I'm ready to talk.
Okay.
All right.
As a writer for How To Geek, you have had to write about 5G technology and the conspiracy theories surrounding it. In the article you wrote in June of 2019, you discussed how worried people should be about 5G. We wanted you on the show to explain this to us like we are idiots. We want you to talk to us like we're 5. Explain it to me.
We don't want you to make that determination. We just wanted you to talk to us that way.
Yeah. What is 5G and how does it work?
Okay, so I'm assuming that you know that 5G is the next generation wireless technology for cell phones and mobile devices and things like that. About every 10 years, the United States upgrades its wireless infrastructure. So we went from like 1G to 2G to 3G, which 3G came out right around the same time as the first iPhone. Then we had 4G, which is also called LTE on a lot of services. And now we have 5G coming out. And what's different about 5G is functionally, it's like 10 to 100 times faster than the wireless service that is out today with 4G. But it means that it needs a whole new infrastructure. So there's going to be lots of new towers, and 5G, the reason people are freaking out about it, the people that are freaking out about it, is unlike older technology, 5G is going to be 3 different bands, like this: low frequency, mid frequency, and high frequency. And the high frequency part of 5G is in the same general zone as microwaves, and people think it's the same as like a military weapon, and it's going to kill people, it's going to cause cancer, it's going to fry your DNA, and that sort of thing. And that's probably not going to happen, but that is the concern.
So
you're saying there's a chance.
Well, here's the deal.
That was just my Dumb and Dumber reference.
I gotcha.
Okay.
The thing with 5G is that it is true that there is not a huge amount of testing that's been done on 5G itself. And so the conspiracy theorists and the people who are fear-mongering about 5G will say, well, there's been no testing done, so how do we know it's not going to kill us? Well, 5G is part of the electromagnetic spectrum that we have a lot of familiarity with. It's akin to radio waves. We've understood radio waves for 150 years. And this is simply a higher frequency version of it. And because it's higher frequency, that means it doesn't travel as far through the air. So you need more towers. So you'll have to have like little 5G transmitters, you know, on every block or every few houses or whatever in a dense urban area. And the fact that it doesn't travel as far means that when 5G hits your skin, it can't penetrate more than 0.6 millimeters. That's not even past the very outer layer of your skin. So it's not going to give you brain cancer because it doesn't penetrate that far. And it's what we call non-ionizing radiation. And this is, I know it sounds sciencey, but it's not that hard. Let me caveat it by saying that when people hear about radiation, they immediately start thinking, oh my God, radiation, nuclear weapons, I'm going to die of radiation poisoning. Radiation is not magic death cooties. Radiation isn't, it's in the dosage, it's in the kind of radiation you get. And when you say a cell phone puts out radiation, well, it's putting out radio waves. You know, we're awash in radio waves all the time. And it's non-ionizing radiation. And basically what that means is ionizing radiation is strong enough, it's energetic enough that it can break chemical bonds. And when radiation can break chemical bonds, it can actually damage living tissue. It can cause cancer and bad things. Well, it turns out that all of the radiation that cell phones put out and cell phone towers put out is non-ionizing. Doesn't have enough energy to break chemical bonds to cause physical harm. And so scientists, as a general rule, say this whole class of radiation is not harmful. So that would be like radio waves, extremely low frequency waves. Things that are ionizing would be like ultraviolet and X-rays and gamma rays. You know, those are scary radiation, right? We know about those. Those can hurt you and kill you. But that's not what 5G is. Now, before I turn it back over to you, I'll simply say, as I say, there hasn't been a huge amount of testing done on 5G because we just assume fairly accurately that it's going to behave very much like the energy we are already familiar with 4G and 3G and stuff like that. There's always the chance that there will be subtle health effects associated with 5G that we haven't discovered yet. But we've been living with this kind of radiation for decades. And cancer rates are not going up. Cancer rates are flat. It's not causing long-term health effects on people. So if there are health effects, they're going to be fairly subtle. And it's not like killing all our children or anything like that.
Okay, so here's a conspiracy theory question then.
Mm-hmm.
So if...
See, she forbade me from doing this. I'm listening now.
Well, no, I'm just, hey, he opened the door just a little bit. I'm going to jump on in. I just want to know his thoughts. So writing for a tech magazine, and would you say that if it turned out there were something harmful in the, health-wise for us with 5G?
Right.
How probable would it be that it could be covered up by AT&T or Verizon or any?
That's a really interesting question, because people are always going to point at the past and say, oh, well, cigarette companies covered up the health risks of cigarettes for years, right? And they kind of did, but there were also people talking about the health risks of cigarettes through that entire time period. It's just that I think there was actually some collusion between tobacco companies and the government. So yeah, there's always that risk. But for this to be an actual conspiracy in today's day and age, first of all, you would have to have thousands of engineers and programmers and researchers colluding to cover it up, plus medical doctors. And, boy, I don't know, there's all kinds of folks that would be in on it. And it's like any conspiracy theory that you have out there, when you really think about it, the number of people involved in actively covering up the conspiracy starts to become enormous. And you can't have more than a handful of people in a conspiracy and keep it a secret for any length of time. So I would say, honest to goodness, there's little to no chance that you could have like 5G radiation like actively causing cancer or something and they cover it up for 2 decades. This is not going to happen. I'd say it's physically impossible.
Well, I mean, yeah, if you think about what has happened with the coronavirus, it was just we're pretty sure now that China knew about it since November, and then it was in January that actually there was a female doctor first who originally talked about it, but everyone else knows the gentleman as the actual whistleblower because he was the one that went live outside of China with it.
Right. And keep in mind, China is a literal communist dictatorship. So they can actually button up something like that pretty effectively because they, can order their people to not talk about it under force of arms. And, they can shut off their internet. They can do all kinds of things to control that stuff. The United States, it doesn't work that way. See, we're such an open society that you couldn't maintain a secret like that.
Okay, I have a question. So my question is, I have a router that when I log on to my computer, it tells me there's the option of the, regular connection or the 5G connection. So does that mean that people with 5G routers, we're already running it and have been running it for a while?
No, that's a different thing. That's not 5G,
Okay.
that's 5 gigahertz.
Okay.
Wi-Fi operates on 2 different bands. One is 2.4 gigahertz, the other one is 5 gigahertz.
Okay.
And Wi-Fi and 5G cellular technology is a totally different
Two
animal.
different things. Okay,
Yeah,
my other question.
A raccoon and a giraffe.
Understood. So my other question is, and this is conspiracy-like, but I'm wondering, colony collapse with bees, which started around the release of 4G that I know of.
Okay.
Is there a chance that 5G, like say bats who use echolocation, is there a chance that wildlife, I'm pretty sure that people aren't going to get cancer and die of 5G, but is there a chance that wildlife is going to be affected in a way that maybe we're not considering?
I would say that's possible. All the time we find stuff like that, like the Navy, some years back, probably a decade ago, I think, I've kind of lost track. They were testing a new sonar system that was basically so loud underwater that it was deafening whales. And whales were unable to find their way around because the sonar was causing them hearing damage. And so that was an unanticipated consequence of that technology. The Navy has backed off using it so that they don't, like kill whales.
Right.
If we discovered something like that about insects, bees, wildlife, that would require the industry to rethink it. And ideally, the government would force them to do it if they didn't do it willingly. I don't know that there's any evidence that's true. I think that there is a lot of conspiracy theory musings about things like cellular technology interfering with bees. But I'm not really read up on this lately, but the best of my knowledge is scientists still really have no idea what caused the colony collapses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's been kind of my bigger concern is that, like butterflies, we need those, the pollinators specifically. That's ultra local. And with these little, whatever, receivers, transmitters, whatever they're called, having to be so close together, I think that's been kind of one of my concerns about it. And I don't know that that's conspiracy or not. It's just that we don't truly understand how they navigate.
I think it becomes a conspiracy theory when you accept as canon that that is true. And then you make up sciencey like terms to explain,
to convince the world.
Yeah, to convince yourself that it's true. It's only true if you can do the actual science of experiment on bees or whatever animal you're interested in and see, are they actually affected by this technology or not? But you can't just put together a word salad that seems to describe 5G and in very loose, sciencey kind of words and say, well, therefore bees die. That doesn't help anybody.
Yeah, but there are a lot of people who are really good at making word salad.
This is true. This fuels the entire conspiracy theory universe.
People with very high verbal IQs are out there and they need something to talk about. Okay, Summer, that was me.
So what would you say are the overall benefits of 5G?
Well, the main benefit for normal users like you and me is faster performance on our phones. So like videos, you can play higher resolution videos with no lag and that sort of thing. But the reality is that doesn't really help us very much because already, I don't know about you, but my phone, my internet access is pretty much as fast as it needs to be. 5G really benefits other things, not directly consumers, but it's being implemented for corporations, for government infrastructure, and for the Internet of Things. Are you familiar with the Internet of Things?
No.
Is this like
Okay.
for the platform for driverless cars and stuff?
Sure, that's an example. Yeah, the IoT, the Internet of Things, basically it's just a network of devices, sensors and things like that that communicate with each other over the internet. And like if you have any smart devices in your house, like a Ring alarm system or Philips smart lights that you can turn on and off with Alexa, you have an Internet of Things in your home. And
Your Alexa just lit up on you.
never mind, little girl. I have one in every room, so it's always a challenge. Um, so, like you probably have one in your house, and the Internet of Things is connected cars. And so one of the things that 5G is going to allow is connected cars that can get real-time updates on traffic and positioning information. So cars can work as a network on the roads, so they can drive more efficiently and drive more safely. If every car knows where every other car is on the road, it's much more difficult for them to run into each other, essentially. And a lot of companies are going to rely on the Internet of Things to do whatever they do, from manufacturing to retail to industry, do it all more efficiently. And one of the things that that 5G does for them is 5G has all these different modes, like a low power mode. So right now, if you're trying to use an Internet of Things with 4G technology, the LTE technology that's out in the air right now, you have to go to your remote sensor and change the batteries in it every week because it's power hungry. But with 5G, it can be so power efficient that it'll go 6 months without a battery change. And that's a huge improvement for any industry or company or whatever that needs to implement an Internet of Things to do things.
So
if we ever want our flying cars, we're going to have to do 5G.
Yeah, you don't trust me. You really don't want a flying car. You've seen people drive, right?
What about just a self-driving flying car?
Self-drive. I'd rather have a self-driving car than a self-driving flying car. That still scares the bejesus out of me. It'd be awesome. I'd love to have it, but that's how I will die.
Know yourself.
We're social workers, so we have talked about it quite often that we would love a self-driving car because we travel for work.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have to chart when we get home. But if the car would drive itself, then we could chart in the car.
And when you have like an hour and a half drive to the next patient's house, then sleeping between patients would be great.
Would be a good thing. Yeah, we work in very rural settings.
Yeah.
Yeah, just my experience so far is that people that choose to watch a movie at the steering wheel of their Tesla, it doesn't end well for them. We're not quite there yet with self-driving cars, but 5G will really, I think, make a major improvement in the safety and reliability of that tech.
All right, actually, okay.
Wait.
Okay, go.
So if we upgrade to 6G,
10 years from now.
Okay, so that is adding stronger radio frequency?
Well, I don't know that anybody has really spec'd out what 6G is going to look like yet, but we are years away from it. It took like 5 years to develop 5G, so 5G kind of started about 5 years ago. 6G, probably maybe 4 or 5 years from now, people will really start getting serious about creating the specifications of 6G. And it'll probably be faster. It'll probably have less latency. It'll probably be more energy efficient. So batteries that rely on it will last longer and stuff like that. It's probably just going to be 5G, but better. But who can say? Because it's like saying, I actually what is the next vacuum cleaner going? That's a terrible example. What will the next generation of M&Ms be like? It's like, well, hopefully they'll have pistachios and dark chocolate, but I don't know because I don't think they've designed it yet.
I never dreamed that we would have vacuum cleaners that just go around the house on their own. I mean,
yeah, isn't that awesome though? It's like you're living in the Jetsons.
It's more awesome when the cat's riding it though. Legit question. My older son is a truck driver,
Mhm.
And someone contacted me because they knew I had a truck driving son, wanting to interview him for their podcast. I don't know if they ever got in touch with him or not to talk to him about this, but he drives over the road right now. And I know that it's an appliance company right now, I think, that is using or studying driverless technology to go from production to warehouse, not
Mhm.
warehouse to store, but production to warehouse.
Right.
What is this going to do to certain jobs and certain people?
It's the apocalypse. I swear I'm only one quarter joking here. We are on a trajectory where within the next 30 years, it's always hard to make guesstimates, to make predictions
Right.
about how long things are going to happen. But I'll say 30 years from now, the majority of jobs that exist today will no longer exist because all cars will be driverless, all trucks will be driverless, probably planes will be pilotless. And a majority of manufacturing jobs, retail jobs, all those jobs can be done by machines, by robots, and by artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is already extremely sophisticated, and it's getting better all the time.
I actually have a question about that, but go ahead.
Yeah, like one of the things that I had always believed for a long time is, well, it doesn't matter what other jobs get eliminated by artificial intelligence, they'll always need writers. Well, no, that's not true, because for years now, I'd say for at least 3 years, there's been a number of newspapers that the sports pages are written entirely by artificial intelligence.
Wow.
You don't need writers anymore.
Yep.
As long as, but, eventually they'll even write novels. But in the short term, like news reporting, all that sort of stuff will be taken over by artificial intelligence.
I can't remember which organizations it was now. Facebook maybe, or I can't remember, but there was an organization that created an AI, and they had 2 different AIs, and they let them talk to each other. Did you read about that?
I heard about
them talk to each other, and then they actually created their own language that they couldn't understand, so they had to shut them down. And I'm like, it's Terminator. It's
Really?
But
yeah, I've seen that happen a number of times, where anytime you have basically 2 machines and you let them communicate with each other and they're AI based, they're going to come up with shortcuts and solutions that it's impossible to reverse engineer. They'll figure out how to do a thing. That's the whole point of artificial intelligence, is having them figure out a more efficient way of solving a problem than humans could do. And the shortcuts they take, the ways that they figure out how to do it, you can't like backtrack it and figure out how they did it. So they might come up with the right answer, but it's impossible to figure out how they came up with that answer. And that's a little scary, because we've lost control of a piece of that technology.
If anything, conspiracy theory really scares me. Honestly, AI is one of the things that really, I'm not going to lie, kind of, not nuclear warfare or a one world government. It doesn't scare me as much as the idea of AI in general.
And you don't need a conspiracy theory for AI, because AI is an actual, I'm not going to say it's a concern. AI is great and it does a lot of wonderful things for us, but if used incorrectly or if not used carefully, there are dangers. Are you familiar with the, I think it's called the paperclip paradox in AI?
No, I don't think so.
All right, so here's the problem. You have an AI that you program to make paperclips, and you give it a simple instruction that is, make as many paperclips as possible. Now the AI is going to, again, solve the problem in ways you can't imagine it's going to do it. It's going to teach itself how to do this. And so in this thought experiment, the paperclip figures out that the most efficient way to make the most paperclips is to grind up everything on the planet to turn it into paperclips. So basically it kills all humans and turns them into paper clips. So downside, it's the apocalypse, and the upside, we've made all the paper clips. And it's a demonstration of the fact that you don't need an artificial, like a general artificial intelligence that is as smart as human beings or smarter than human beings to destroy the earth. You don't need that for a Terminator kind of scenario, because even a fairly dumb AI that's narrowly focused the unintended consequences can have catastrophic consequences for humanity. So you have to be very careful about how you use them. What's that?
We almost need an AI with a conscience.
Yeah, and that's hard to program.
Yeah, even on just a simple level like that.
Yeah, you want to be able to give them like Asimov's 3 rules. Don't harm people, don't harm yourself, all of that. But that's really hard to program, to get a machine to understand what that means.
I mean, look how well that worked for iRobot.
Exactly. Yeah, that's actually a variation of that same thought experiment.
So here's a question about AI. And we're totally off 5G, but since you brought it up, this is a great topic.
No, look, 5G is not going to kill us. We've settled that. Let's move on. We have the geek.
We have a geek. We want to talk to the geek. Okay. This is something. So Aaron and I, we are both love conspiracy theories. We both really enjoy them. We will not discuss whether or not we believe them. Just know that.
Or which ones we believe or don't believe.
Yeah. But. So for this week, what we did for the main part of the show was we picked 2 books that were very anti-conspiracy theory, and read them, and we're going to talk about them. Here's something that I have noticed, and I have been trying to explain to conspiracy theorists who are older, who didn't come from the internet generation, and I have a hard time getting it across to them. But when using social media to spread conspiracy theories, tell me if I'm right about this, and you would be the guy to ask. So with Twitter especially, and Reddit uses bots. You can have these programs that will do things like retweet past tweets and make it look like it's something you wrote today, that kind of thing. So sometimes what happens is somebody tweets a conspiracy theory, basically. One person. There is an AI out there. There's a bot out there. And they're not just picking up several strings of words and retweeting that. They're actually understanding what the concept is that tweet is trying to say, retweeting it, and then doing things like sponsoring that one tweet post, or sharing it on your post, even if you didn't do it. So you had this one tweet that was tweeted by one crazy person out in the middle of, let's say, South Carolina, where we're from, and it gets picked up by this bot, and it is tweeted out there 150,000 times in a course of an hour. And so that's one of the things I try to caution people about when looking at social media coverage of. Because, you don't just look at it's not just that you have to do some type of critical thinking and digging into the conspiracy itself. You have to look at the number of times it was tweeted, who it was tweeted from, try to actually track down that source of where it came from to know whether or not you're even reading something. And they talk about this in this one book that I picked up, The Republic of Lies, the one that I'm reading, where the Pizzagate, I think it was Pizzagate, was the one where they feel like they actually think that they have evidence that a lot of what was said about Pizzagate were come from bots. Intelligent AI, simple AI, really, that was able to, and this was in 2016, it wasn't just looking for a string of numbers, string of words, but actually understood the tweet and then
read. Yeah, I think everything you said is fairly accurate. And this is the reason that I think that social media, even more than just AI in general, is going to be responsible for the death of human civilization, is it's exhausting. It is absolutely emotionally and intellectually exhausting to understand how you are being personally manipulated by social media, Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and stuff like that, because you have to be on your toes all the time. You have to be paying attention to the posts and where they're coming from and what the agenda is, and who's got the energy for that? A lot of people will just, like or retweet or whatever without really thinking about it, and they're compounding the problem.
Political memes are awful.
Yeah.
From both sides.
I don't know what the solution to this problem is, aside from just shutting down social media, because we're not, as a species, I do not think that we are smart enough to be able to manipulate social media properly. It's like giving a nuclear weapon to a 5-year-old.
We're lazy.
Yes, yeah, actually, well put. We are lazy.
Yeah, when we see something out there that speaks to us personally, we don't want to dig. We're just like, oh, everybody needs to know this. Look, it's nicely summed up. It makes sense. Here, look at this. And we send it back out 1,000 times.
I actually wrote an article sort of about this topic. The premise of the article is there ever a how is the title phrased? It was something like, is there ever a good reason to censor people on the internet in social media? And that's kind of related to this whole topic. And it's a really hard problem, because some social media companies are treated like publications where they're responsible for the content they publish. Others are, I forget what the term is, but they just kind of pass it through and they're not responsible for it. The individual people posting are the ones that are responsible. You have First Amendment rights, so the government can't regulate it to a large degree. It's a really hard problem.
And you don't want to step on anybody's First Amendment, but see, and with people, it's one thing, but with all these bots, is there any way to weed that out?
Well, keep in mind, we're just a couple of years away from bots becoming sentient, and then they'll have rights as well.
I was just thinking that would almost just have to be new legislation that's going to happen when we get there.
Eventually, we probably will reach a point where certain kinds of programs become self-aware, and at that time, we have to figure out how are we going to treat them? What kind of rights will they have? And yeah, that's going to be a serious problem.
See, and nobody thinks on those terms. Are we closer to that than we realize?
Oh,
than most people realize?
A lot of people thinking about this. And if you go back probably 30 years, computer scientists thought they were on the verge of being able to create self-aware software back then. Like, oh, it's 5 years away. And they realized it was always 5 years away because they weren't solving some of the core underlying problems. And a lot of those problems are still fairly well unresolved. And there are a lot of computer scientists out there that say it's basically an unsolvable problem. We'll never have self-aware software. But there are other people like Elon Musk who think it's a concern, because we're probably only a couple of major like discoveries or changes away from having that software be self-aware or be intelligent. And we have to be prepared for how we're going to deal with it at that time. But there's a lot of working groups. There are research companies that are out there like formulating how should we deal with it when the time comes.
So if I wanted to buy some stock in one of these companies,
I would say your money should always be on Microsoft.
Really?
Yeah, because what Microsoft can't do themselves, they will buy.
Has Bill Gates walked away from Microsoft? I know he stepped down from something.
Yeah, he left Microsoft actually 15 or 20 years ago, but he stayed on the board. And
Okay.
he resigned from the board just a few months ago. So now he's completely disconnected from Microsoft so that he can spend all his time on the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
Is he really putting RFIDs in our vaccines?
I have gotten so much of that. Like I get a lot of email from people who read like that 5G article that you found on How to Geek. I get a ton of email from people who want to tell me how wrong I am, and they tell me their conspiracy theory, or they just,
Yeah, we were going to ask you about that, to tell us some of your great emails. That's a good segue.
Yeah,
Go for
actually, by the time this goes live, I'll have already published a follow-up article to that original 5G story on How to Geek, and the title is something along the lines of like crazy conspiracy theories. These are the weirdest emails we got. And I wrote a whole article about these kinds of conspiracy theories that people are sharing with me about 5G and coronavirus. And all kinds of fascinating things. Like there are people that are absolutely convinced that the coronavirus is a hoax. It's not real. There's no such thing as a virus that is doing this. Instead, it is 5G. It's the 5G radiation that is giving people radiation poisoning. And there's a whole backstory to this, because some of these people believe that Bill Gates and Barack Obama are in cahoots. They engineered, as these conspiracy theories conflict with each other, but there's one version of this where they paid a lab in Wuhan, China, to build the virus or design the virus, which they unleashed on the world so that Bill Gates can use his Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to provide the vaccine, the cure, which has nano trackers built into it with nanotechnology. And that's kind of insane, but also at the same time, there are people that believe that globalists, which I think means the UN, but I'm not sure, because I think in general, just calling people globalists is probably just like a racist code word for something. But at any rate, the globalists are using 5G to irradiate men's sperm so that they can't have kids, and it's a population control measure.
Oh, I was hoping so we could have glow-in-the-dark babies.
No babies at all. You know, this is a zero population growth strategy. And what I love about this,
well, I mean, you can follow it, because, you know, if we're going to give all of our jobs to the computers, then we definitely need to depopulate.
Yeah, well, or come up with other things that people can do, like dust the computers as jobs or something.
I guess that could be the new ditch digging
theory. There's a theory for every possible thing you can think of that's related to 5G and coronavirus.
Yeah, we have explored some of them on the show. It's been great fun, you know, looking into some of them and follow. I love the connecting of the dots. That's always, you know, sometimes it's fun. Sometimes it does make me scratch my head and say, maybe. Yeah. But
do not get sucked into these insane. I'm sure you guys probably know one of the definitions of a conspiracy theory is something that is not falsifiable, right? So if you have a theory that can't be falsified because the answer is, oh, well, that evidence has been faked, then if there's nothing I could ever tell you about your pet theory that would make you say, oh, I guess it's not real, then you believe a conspiracy theory. It has to be falsifiable, or else it's just fantasy. It's fiction. So don't get sucked into that, please.
Oh, no. No, it's not with 5G, but you know, there's other stuff.
Oh, okay.
There's other stuff.
With the kooks, you described them as kooks in your article, I think, or maybe it was just when we were talking at one point. With all the kooks that have contacted you about 5G, what has been the most troubling conspiracy theory that you've heard? Like, did any of them concern you?
Yeah, actually. And I think I might have used the term kooks just informally with you, because I haven't.
Kook is a great word. Don't back off from it. Kook is good.
Well, you know, what's sad about this is I think that a lot of the people that buy into these theories actually have mental health issues. And it's sad. And I don't want to trivialize that, honestly. You know, I joke about this stuff sometimes, but these people really genuinely need help in a lot of cases. And actually, this is a really good example of what you just asked about, Summer, because probably the most troubling conspiracy theories are around the ones where it's not the theory itself, but it's about the consequence of it, where people are saying, well, because the globalists are trying to irradiate our sperm, or because Barack Obama is trying to chip every human with the vaccine for the virus, we need to arm ourselves. We need to get guns and go out and take back our country. And we've already seen some violence against infrastructure where people have destroyed or damaged 5G antennas. And it's a matter of time before there are like armed confrontations with like a telecom company employee or something. And I think that's scary. So I have forwarded some email that I got to the FBI. I'm sure they've already seen it, but I thought it was, you know, my responsibility to make sure they were aware of it.
Yeah. How do you even do that? How do you just forward an email to the FBI?
Actually,
is there an actual hotline?
You can go to the FBI website, and there is a whole process for talking to the FBI. I've done it before. This is not my first time like communicating with the FBI about something that's come up in like something I'm writing about.
I want your life. I want to be I had to call the FBI today and let them know.
No, it would be awesome if I was like a spy or something. That would be really cool.
Well, we appreciate your time. We don't want to take up too much of it because we can sit here and do this all night. I do have one last question.
Sure.
Okay. If you had to compare a conspiracy theorist to a particular animal, what animal would you compare us to? And you don't have to worry about offending us, I promise.
Okay. I'm going to say a golden retriever because in my experience, golden retrievers are kind of confused all the time and they want to help you, but whatever they do, they just make things worse. Like, have you ever had a golden who, you know, like desperately wants to help with you making the cake and ends up standing in the batter and using their tail to flash it all over the kitchen floor or something? That's I think, a conspiracy theorist in a nutshell.
Well, at least in that picture, the conspiracy theorist is standing in the right spot. They just can't appreciate the spot they're in.
That's true. And they're adorable.
One of the
First year moderation.
Yeah, well, one of the things I loved about your article was the fact that you actually said it's not clear, the science isn't clear cut.
Right.
I liked that. I appreciated that very much. So,
yeah, anybody.
The day may come that this may prove
yes
harmful.
No. Anybody that comes down one side or the other and says there's no question that it's going to kill us, or there's no question that there's no risk, then don't trust that person because they are not using science.
There you
kudos
go.
to you. Thank you very, very much.
Oh, my pleasure. You guys have a great evening.
You too.
You too.
Good night.